What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about 5 of the best older Samsung flagships that you should check out for 2021, 2022. So let's go ahead and get started here. First off, with the Galaxy S10e, you guys know this is one of my favorite older flagship phones. So you do have on here an aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. So you just have an overall really solid build quality on here. And this phone is super cheap at around 200 bucks right now. So it is just an amazing phone for the price now. So you do have a 5.8-inch display. It's a dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 Plus. It's fairly compact at 1080p, and then you have 438 for the PPI. Overall, it's a very nice looking display. You also have the punch hole on board as well, so zero issues with the display on here. I think it has aged really well. You also have the latest version of Android 11 on here with the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. Basically, this phone is still very capable of playing the latest games. It also runs One UI very smoothly as well, so I really don't have any performance problems with this phone. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here, so you have plenty of storage. This phone also has a headphone jack with stereo speakers as well, tuned by AKG, which sound very good. So excellent speakers on this phone. You also have NFC on board, the fingerprint scanner, and you even have Samsung desktop support on this phone. The cameras are pretty good on this phone as well. It's a dual camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, 16 megapixel ultra wide with 4K video at 60 FPS, and then a 10 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K. As you can see from the photos, the S10e still takes excellent photos, especially for 200 bucks. I think you're getting definitely a very good camera here. Fairly good colors, a little bit of oversaturation on some greens, but you know, good dynamic range. The ultra wide is pretty good as well. It doesn't perform super good in low light, but it performs decent enough. And I just think, you know, images are sharp. The selfie's great, video solid. Overall, it's still a very good camera. Now, I forgot to mention, you do have your physical fingerprint scanner side mounted on this phone as well. That's probably one of my favorite features about this phone. It's just super easy to get into, and you also have face unlock too. Now, I do want to touch on the battery situation. So you do have a 3100 milliamp battery, 15-watt charging, wireless charging, as well as reverse wireless charging too. So you can charge up another device with this phone, which is really nice to use it as a charging pad. Battery life is okay on this phone. You can get around like 5 hours of screen on time here, so definitely it's not going to be the best phone as far as battery life, but it is, you know, decent for a light user. So definitely check out the S10e. Now, next is the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus. This is an awesome phone for anybody that wants a sort of like a newer Note, but you don't want to pay like, you know, $1,000 or even like you know, 800, 700 bucks. This phone is relatively cheap right now on Amazon. It's around $425 for the refurbished version. I think it's still a very good phone. You have on here a premium design, glass back, aluminum frame, IP68 dust and water resistant as well. You also have a massive 6.8-inch AMOLED display. It's HDR10 Plus. It's actually a 2K display, or 1440p. 598 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful display. Punch hole in the middle. It is upgradable to Android 11. This phone is also running the Snapdragon 855 and the Adreno 640 as well. And overall, it's still going to be a beast with performance. So, you know, basically the phone is geared towards people who like to draw. You have a really accurate and really nice stylus on this phone. So also, just for people who just want to navigate with the stylus, also check this phone out if you really want to do something like that. You also have micro SD support, 256 gigs of storage on the base model, and 12 gigs of RAM. So you're getting a ton of storage and a ton of RAM. So this phone is just going to be excellent performance wise. You do have on here stereo speakers on here, and there is no headphone jack, unfortunately. So I do note that you do have NFC with a fingerprint scanner under the display. Your Samsung desktop support is here, and Samsung wireless desktop experience is on here as well, which is really nice. So this phone also has great cameras, a quad camera setup, 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, 16 megapixel ultra wide with a 0.3 depth sensor, along with 4K video, and then a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K. 4K, so you already know you're going to get some very good cameras, especially at this price point. And then you have, from what I've seen, pretty decent battery size, a 4300 milliamp battery. You also have some very fast charging at 45 watts, and this phone of course has the wireless charging and the reverse wireless charging. So I think this phone is 100% bargain at this price point. I would definitely check this phone out. Now I do want to talk about the older Samsung Galaxy Note phones. So I was able to use the Note 8, and you can also get the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 if you don't want to spend, you know, even less money. The Note 8 is going to be like around $250 right now, but the Note 9 is actually just as cheap. It's just a little bit more expensive. I think around $300. I've seen it for even cheaper. But yeah, consider picking up a Note 8 or Note 9. Now, specifically about the Note 8, since it's just super cheap, if you want a phone with a stylus, this phone is still really fast and still, I think, a good bargain. You'd have an aluminum frame on here, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant, Super AMOLED display, HDR10, a 6.3 inches, 1440p, 521 for the PPI. Still a very nice display, super sharp display. The last update this phone got was Android 9, but this phone does have support in the you know, rooting community. And you have the Snapdragon 835, and if you get the Note 9, you'll get the 845. But when I was using the phone was a pretty solid performer. So as far as just being able to game still and just bouncing in and out of applications, I did not have an issue with this phone's performance at all. You do have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. You also have a headphone jack, but no stereo speakers on this phone, unfortunately. You do have NFC on board too, and this phone still has the Samsung desktop experience. It has the iris scanner, physical fingerprint scanner, rear mounted as well. Believe it or not, this phone still has some pretty good cameras. So you have a 12 megapixel standard, and then a 12 megapixel telephoto, 4K video, and then an 8 megapixel selfie with that iris scanner, and then you get 1440p video for the selfie. The camera was fine. It took some pretty detailed shots. Again, there's no ultra wide, but you know, you do have a telephoto for the 2x optical zoom, which comes in handy. But overall image quality, I think for this price point, and you're getting the stylus, I think that's pretty solid as well. So this phone also has pretty decent battery life. I'm not gonna say great, 3300 milliamp, and then you have 15-watt charging. You also have wireless charging, and battery life was okay. I was able to get through the day. I think I was getting around like 6 hours of screen on time, which is technically a full day's use. So definitely check out the Note 8 or Note 9. Now next is going to be the Galaxy S9. You can find this phone super cheap for around 200 bucks now. So this phone has come down in price, and you have a aluminum frame on here. You have a glass back. It still feels really solid in the hand. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, and this phone is fairly compact too. It's got a 5.8 inch Super AMOLED display with HDR10. It's a 1440p display, so extremely sharp, 570 for the PPI, and this phone does not have any type of notch or punch hole. So I enjoyed the display on here, and you also have Android 10 up on this phone, so was upgraded with Android 10. I believe that was the last update. Snapdragon 845 and Adreno 630 as well. So performance wise, this phone was able to still play, you know, the latest games and stuff like that, bouncing in and out of applications fine. This phone did get hotter than usual. It was like one of the more hotter phones when gaming and stuff like that, so do note that. You might want to like buy a case for this phone. Micro SD support is on board, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here. Stereo speakers are on board. They sound really great, and you still retain the headphone jack. You do have NFC on this phone as well too, and you also have on here your iris scanner, and your physical fingerprint scanner is on here. And this phone just has one single camera. If you get the plus version, you do get an extra camera, but just a 12 megapixel standard 4K video, then an 8 megapixel selfie that shoots 1440p. Overall, the image quality again still was very good, even just for the single lens. I thought it was you know, pretty decent. You get very good detail, colors came out pretty good, so I had zero issues with the camera. Actually, just the fact that you only get, you know, one lens, there's no ultra wide, no depth sensor or anything like that, but for what it is, it still worked fine. So you do have a 3000 milliamp battery on here with 15-watt charging with wireless charging as well. Battery life was fairly decent on here. here. Again, I was getting around 6 hours of screen on time with this phone too, so not too bad. So definitely check out the Note or the Galaxy S9. All right, last on the list is the Galaxy S10 Plus, which is going for around 300 bucks, a little over 300 bucks. Still an extremely solid phone here. We do have pretty much the same design as the S10e, just bigger. Aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. You also have a dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 Plus at 6.4 inches, and you also have a 1440p display, 522 for the PPI, so very sharp, very nice looking display. Now you do have the double punch hole, which trust me, you will get used to it. Samsung also provided the Android 11 update with this phone, so you do have the latest version of Android, Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. Again, it's going to be a phone that's going to be still a great performer with the Snapdragon 855 chip. There is an Exynos version, which I would personally avoid and just get the Snapdragon version if you want the best performance. Micro SD support is on board, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on the base model. You do have your stereo speakers are on board, and your headphone jack is still on board with this phone as well, which is really nice. NFC is on board. Your fingerprint scanner is under the display as well too, and this phone does have the Samsung desktop experience on it as well. So this phone does have very good cameras, still a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide, shoots in 4K, and then you have a 10 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K. And that selfie cam, you also have a wide lens at 8 megapixels. So if you're somebody that takes like group selfies a lot and you need a wider lens, then this is comes in handy. You do have on here a 4100 milliamp battery, 15 watt charging with wireless charging and reverse wireless charging as well, so a pretty nice size battery on this phone. So definitely check out the S10 Plus, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.